Everyone in Medford trusts Pastor Jeff. That's not an accident. That's the whole strategy, until you know where to look and what to look for. Most people think Jeff is harmless, the sweet, slightly goofy pastor in the background, a guy with a Bible verse ready for every occasion and a smile that never quite reaches his eyes. But if you actually track what Jeff does across the full run of young Sheldon, you stop seeing a flawed but lovable character. You start seeing a man who betrays the people closest to him over and over, in ways so calm and so practiced that the show frames them as personality quirks instead of what they actually are. The CC baptism is where I have to start, because everything else Jeff does, you could argue, is manipulation or self-protection or just small-town pastor politics. But this one doesn't have a charitable reading. Georgie and Mandy are not members of his church. They have not asked to have their daughter baptized, and Jeff does it anyway. He performs the sacrament on a newborn who has zero say in the matter behind Georgie and Mandy's backs, and apparently considers this a good deed. Here's the thing that makes it worse. Jeff knows his theology. He's been a Baptist pastor his whole career, and Baptists don't baptize infants. The entire doctrinal foundation of believers' baptism is that it has to be voluntary, it has to be personal, it has to come from genuine faith. Baptizing a baby isn't just unauthorized in the Georgie and Mandy sense. It's theologically incoherent in the Baptist sense. So either Jeff doesn't know the basics of his own denomination, or he decided that what he wanted to do mattered more than what his own church teaches. Neither of those is a compliment. But okay, let's go back further, because the CC baptism is the most visible betrayal. It's not the deepest one. The deepest one is Mary. Mary Cooper gave that man everything. She organized his congregation, she ran his events, she showed up when no one else did. She defended the church to her own family for years, which, if you know the Coopers, you know is not a low-cost commitment. And she did all of this because she genuinely believed that Jeff was a man of God, that the church was a place worth protecting, and that her loyalty to both of those things was spiritually meaningful. And Jeff fired her. He fired her because she stood up for Georgie and Mandy at a moment when doing so was socially inconvenient for the church. Not because she was wrong, not because what she did was unchristian, because it created friction, because Mary for once put a person above an institution, and Jeff couldn't afford that. Let that sit for a second. This woman gave him years of total dedication and the kind of institutional loyalty that is genuinely hard to find. And the moment she became a liability, he showed her the door. Not with remorse, with professionalism. The same smooth, practiced professionalism he uses for everything else. And then the church starts falling apart without her. Because of course it does. Mary was running half of what made that place function. And Jeff realizes he needs her back. So he calls her in. He acts like he's doing her a favor by offering her the job again. He frames the whole reconciliation as grace, as Christian forgiveness, as Jeff being the bigger person. That is not forgiveness. That is an employer calling a key employee back when the numbers tank. The timing tells you everything. He didn't reach out because he felt remorse. He reached out because he needed her. And Mary, because she loves that church, and because she's Mary, goes back, and Jeff gets to look magnanimous in the process. The man fired her for having values, and then got credit for rehiring her. That is the Jeff playbook running at full speed. But here's the one that actually haunts me. George's funeral. George Cooper and Pastor Jeff had a real friendship, or the closest thing Jeff allows himself to have to one. They drank together. They watched football. George was not a believer, and Jeff knew it. He knew George only went to church because Mary made him. He knew George's faith was somewhere between polite tolerance and quiet skepticism, and he was fine with that. When it was just the two of them, Jeff could drop the pastor act and just be a person. And then George dies. And Jeff stands up at that funeral and performs. He runs a full service. He delivers the spiritual comfort Mary needs. He says the right things. He hits the right notes. He is, professionally, exactly what the moment calls for. But he's not grieving. Not really. You can see it if you watch his face. There's no shock in it. There's no personal loss. There's just competence. The face of someone executing a task they've done 100 times before. A real friend would have been undone by that. A real friend would have struggled to get the words out. A real friend might have pulled the family aside before the service and said, "I don't know what to say. This one is different." Jeff didn't do any of that. He put the roll back on, and he did his job. And the worst part isn't the funeral itself. It's what comes after. Because in the weeks that follow, Jeff starts showing up at the Cooper house more. He checks on Mary. He offers support. He positions himself as the spiritual anchor of a grieving family. And the show frames this as kindness. It isn't kindness, it's retention. Mary is now one of the most emotionally vulnerable people in Medford, Texas. She is going to pour everything she has into that church, because the church is the only place grief feels organized. Jeff knows this. He doesn't engineer it exactly, but he recognizes it, and he does nothing to redirect it. He just shows up, says the right things, and lets the process run. Mary's grief becomes his most reliable resource. Here's what separates Jeff from every other complicated character on the show. Everyone else has moments where the mask slips. George drinks on the patio and you see the loneliness underneath. Mary cries and you see the fear underneath. Even Mima, who has probably done things that would constitute a criminal record in at least 3 states, has moments of actual humanity that break through. Jeff never breaks, not once. And I used to think that made him unknowable. Now I think it makes him the most knowable character on the show. Because a person who never takes the mask off isn't someone who hides who they are. It's someone who is completely fused with the role. Jeff doesn't betray people because he's secretly evil. He betrays them because the people in his life only exist to him as functions. Mary is a function. George was a function. Georgie and Mandy's baby was a function. He baptized that baby because in his operating system, bringing someone into the church is always good. The parent's consent is a variable. His authority is the constant. That's the betrayal. Not just the specific acts, though those are bad enough. It's that Jeff has been surrounded by people who trusted him completely, who gave him access to their worst moments and their most sacred ones, and he processed every single one of them as a resource management problem. Mary never figured this out. That's the part that keeps me up at night. She watched her husband die, she leaned on Jeff for comfort, she went back to him after he fired her, and she never once saw it clearly. Not because she's stupid, because she needed it too badly. And Jeff was very, very good at being needed. And that's what makes it a betrayal specifically. Not just manipulation. Manipulation is when someone tricks you. Betrayal is when someone you trusted with your real self uses that access against you. Mary gave Jeff her grief, her doubts, her fear, her most broken moments. She handed him everything that was true about her, and he cataloged all of it, not maliciously, just efficiently. The way a good pastor does. The way a man who stopped being a person somewhere along the road and became a role does. He's still there, still smiling, still saying the right things, and the church is full every Sunday.